share this, and you take the one. So, welcome, Nicola, welcome, Gamba. I want to go back to one date, 10th March 2022, 11 o'clock midnight, an unidentified Tupolev crashes in Zagreb. So this is the start of the work.
I was hoping that it was aliens, because there was, at that moment, some people in Zagreb heard the crash. Many people thought that it was yet another earthquake, because there was like an earthquake period in Zagreb. There was no news, just unidentified object crashed. So the morning actually revealed that unidentified object is Tupolev Tu-141 drone. When I say drone, I don't mean a toy, because we think of drone as a remote control toy. This is like a fully fledged war aircraft, 60 tons, built in former 16, yeah. Built in former Soviet Union in late 70s, early 80s, and it crashed only 50 meters from the biggest student dormitory in Zagreb. So only 50 meters away would probably cause many, like dozens of young people die. It was unclear what happened, how, and who launched it. It was only 15 days in Ukraine, into Russian invasion of Ukraine, and it was the first phase of, or first moment of raised nuclear war threats rhetorics that reappeared from the Cold War. As you can remember, 2022, beginning of the conflict, nuclear war became a topic again. Particularly that couple of days, that was like big news everywhere. So, yeah, that was the starting point of the project.
Actually, the work is been exhibited some months ago in Zagreb for the first time, and the name was Three Falls. So it was a very complex storytelling behind, and for this exhibition we have invited one specific fall. This is the Tupolev, which fell into Zagreb 2022. We talk much about the territories and how we define actually the wars define the borders, or the borders define the wars. It's vice versa. And in this case, this missile could go through the NATO air space, went through 3 different countries without everybody noticing it.
So actually, that fact triggered the project. So the trigger was, of course, the huge blast, the event, but the fact that the missile, the drone, the aircraft flew through the first part of Ukraine, then Romania, Hungary, Croatia, and then fell in Zagreb, and it flew totally below the radar. All NATO member countries that are surveilled and controlled by the integrated air defense system. That's NATO high-tech system that controls the sky. Basically, all drones, all missiles, all airplanes that are present in that huge zone are like visible, and if any threat happens, the whole complex chain of protocols are activated by definition. Nothing happened that day. So integrated NATO air defense system was not triggered by the Soviet drone that fell in one of the capitals of NATO member countries. And it flew through 3 NATO country member territories. So that fact opens up a lot of questions that are still remain open for us. How is that possible? And what is actually territory that we are living in? What is the current condition that we are living in? And I think the sound that you can hear in the Oval Office within this exhibition keeps posing that question. The sound, so we use the spatial data of the drone to produce a record. That record is not a sound, that record is spatial data that plays sound. So it's a black box actually that never falls down. It's a rocket that keeps spinning or keep flying above our heads. That's the aesthetic that we want to establish in the Oval Office.
In this moment, I want to come to the collection of the data. Maybe we can talk about, because you have to reconstruct a not happened incident, which was the crash. So you speculatively define a theory which came actually first 2 days before into clarity also. Maybe you can tell about how you define the data to...
We as a group started these discussions even a few years earlier on an exhibition in Rijeka that Nicola initiated, where we discussed various parallel realities that we can kind of reconstruct only through data and sometimes through sound. Since we were discussing for this project, is this a proper forensic project? It can't be, because limited and mainly by intention hidden data. But what we know is we know the territory that it overflown, that he had overflown, and we know one important aspect, and that is the specific duration of the flight. The territory itself is data, because we utilized digital elevation mapping information, which has intensity. We also, intensity meaning some number. We utilized geographic coordinates, and we utilized the most important part for this, the duration itself. All these aspects, when placed in a matrix, are sufficient data for us to transfer the idea of the fall into a sound. Mio, for this specific situation, used Super Collider and transferred our database of data into a new database of generated sample chunks that were completely artificial, but based on some reality. Then the second part was, how do we conquer the gallery space with the layers of these sound chunks now recombined into a composition. But since we started from space, we wanted to end up as a spatial sound. That's why these very directional speakers that were constructed also by Mio were utilized to make the sound very directional and make the visitor of the gallery space kind of leads you on towards some specific viewpoints of our visual. But also one other important thing was we utilized another layer of tech, that's these vibrational speakers. You utilize that kind of technology when you want to create some specific material to become a speaker itself. What we did, we transformed our gallery space into a huge spatial speaker.
So in that sense, we don't see the real image and also not the real sound. Everything is reconstructed. In the middle, there is data, and we see it, and we hear everywhere the collected data, which forms a kind of a composition. So this is very fragmented And also, I think you are proposing something which might have happened. So it's not the reality, but it's the question mark, it's the suspicious what you bring. And this is very connected to the defined territory. Like when you speak about it's, as we see the territory when we are on a drone, like when we see the earth from the up, like the bird perspective, the speakers are also like very looking alike and pointing out to the image, which is speculation. So maybe we can just go above and talk about this non-territorial moment.
So our piece also plays with the notion of scale. Apparently in the center of the oval space is this map. This is like not a satellite image, but a three-dimensional satellite data, which is different. It looks like satellite, but it's actually 3D used for rendering sound. And also, one of the, to me personally, the most interesting parts of the project is actually the little screen that you can see next to the gramophone. And that screen shows microscopic recording of the groove of the vinyl. Because if you imagine, if you zoom into the groove, if you really zoom in hard into the groove as with a microscope, you will not end up in a record, in an object, you will end up in a territory. When you zoom into a groove of the record where needle plays, it becomes landscape. So that landscape, that surveillance idea of landscape and using that record not as a source of sound but as a map, sonic map, we suggested and created through this microscopic insight into the groove itself. And also I would like to maybe point out something that we rarely mention. Everything that you see in the room, like all technologies that you see in the room, are analog. Screen is analog tube screen from the 80s.
It's a doorbell.
It's basically a doorbell. Gramophone, this is a famous Technics gramophone from 80s. Lightbox is a lightbox made for drawing, like hand-drawn animation from 80s. And Soviet drone is from 80s. So talking about forensics is always based on the using fragments to constellation of fragments in order to reconstruct event. So we are reconstructing event by almost like archaeological fragments that are DIY. Doorbell, the light box, you know, house, gramophone, whatever, like almost everyday objects but back in 80s, in this space, with this narrative, turns it into a new composition.
Maybe this is the moment to think, like, when you go with a magnifier on a map, when it goes small and small and small, then you lose the borders. And exactly, you can lose it also when you zoom out, and when you go out of then you also don't have the borders. So I think this magnifying the scales might be an option if you want to live in a world without the territories. So I find it as a very good approach. Thank you.